Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the supportive viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Springfield at the corner of 16th and Phillips, which used to be the main gate of the old Pillsbury plant here. It's been over 20 years since this actually operated as a business. Now, the history is changing even more because a new group called Moving Pillsbury Forward has become involved, has taken ownership of this property, and we're going to learn a little bit about what the future holds. Chris Richmond, it's been a fascinating trip for you and your colleagues, I'm sure, because through the years, it's been a matter of first getting a hold of the property, getting a deed to the property, and then figuring out what the heck are we going to do now.
Right. It's been quite a trip for us. Number of years, the facility's been closed for 21 years. The community's been trying to decide just what are the next steps for Pillsbury. Unfortunately, the last several years, it was tied up in court. Just last month, our not-for-profit was able to take possession of the property, resolve the court case, and now we're taking steps forward to move on with the property.
As we go through the next 30 minutes, we're going to hear from you and your fellow board members here about what the plans are. First, tell us what we're looking at, because this is a sprawling complex of some almost 20 acres, isn't it?
Right. It's almost 20 acres. It started out in the 1950s. It was 785,000 square feet of workspace, warehouses and flour milling and bakery mix facility. And flour and bakery mixes went all throughout the country from this facility by rail and by truck. So over 1,500 people worked here in the 1950s.
1,500, wow.
And it was a bustling facility that was really the center of economic activity for this whole area on the northeast side of Springfield.
Point out the buildings for us of interest here. What were they used for?
Yeah, this warehouse right in front of us would have warehoused flour that had been freshly milled in what was called the AB mill, this great big building behind us and behind the smokestack. That's where the flour was actually milled. They would mill 35,000 bushels a day on good days.
Wow.
Where the smokestack was, just beneath that, there used to be a great big boiler building. It's since been removed and partially demolished. And then as we move over, the very tall structure, the 14-story structure, is called the head house.
Okay, is that the gray structure?
The gray structure, and that's where all the grain would come in off of truckloads and train loads. It would go up into the head house and then get distributed to all of the silos on the north end of the plant. In later years, another mill was added, and that's that far tall red brick building. And then beyond that, to the left, is the bakery mix tower, and that's where the cake mixes and the brownie mixes would have been made. Yeah. So all the ingredients would go in the top, and by the time it got down to the second floor, you had brownie mix and cake mix that would get boxed up and shipped out throughout the country.
We would need a 2-hour documentary to go in and see all of this, but fortunately we do get to go in during this 30 minutes and see some of it. You can show some of us in the inside of the buildings. We can also talk about the recent past and what happened to this after Cargill closed down. And we're going to talk about the future too, about what this site might be used for as we go forward. But let's go inside first thing, okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Well, Chris, we've entered one of the buildings. Now, this is not one of the oldest, is it? This is a little newer.
This one is. It's a little newer, 1940s era building, and this is part of the bakery mix facility. And this is the test kitchen where they tested the mix on cakes and brownies and pancakes.
Well, you can tell that somebody's gone through here and absolutely just taken whatever they could get and just left the rest in total disarray. It's just a mess, isn't it?
It is. It's really kind of sad to see it in this state, but you know, it really does, when you get up close, it really harks back to that era, mid 20th century, when there were dozens and dozens of employees working in here and baking those cakes and brownies that would go all home with many of the employees, and they would go out to children in the neighborhood who would pass by after school and get a test sheet of cakes or brownies to take home with them.
And I'm sure they were just fine. But you know, a lot of people don't know what Pillsbury did here. They made cake mixes, didn't they, and brownie mixes. That's what the specialty was here.
Yes, that became the specialty, especially after World War II, when packaged goods became much more common. They moved right into that Pillsbury's Best bake mix. So it wasn't just flour, it was bakery mixes, pancake mix, and my favorite, brownies.
Let's talk a little bit about what happened after Pillsbury sold the business to Cargill. Cargill closed the door, locked the gate. What happened?
Right. So Pillsbury sold to Cargill in 1991, and then Cargill's kind of mothballed the manufacturing aspect of the facility here, and they really just used the 3 million bushel capacity grain bins for their purposes. They did that for about 10 years, and in 2001, Cargill went ahead and then mothballed the entire facility. At that point, they put it on the market. They marketed it for several years, couldn't find a buyer. So eventually in 2008, they sold the facility for scrap.
And then that's when a variety, weren't a number of people bought it and sold it and bought it and sold it, ransacked it, and in some cases illegally tore some things up. Asbestos got spread around, and I guess somebody actually paid the price for that, didn't they?
Right. It really an unfortunate situation where there were 2 or 3 different owners between 2008 and 2015, and in late 2014, one of those owners actually got into asbestos, got into trouble with the Illinois EPA, and after the investigation completed, there ended up being a guilty plea in federal court, and one of those guys actually went to federal prison.
And then there's this, at some point you and your group found a way to get the correct paperwork filed and dot all the I's and cross the T's, and you were able to get ownership of it.
We did. It took over 2 years. About 2.5 years ago, we put together a think tank of concerned citizens here in Springfield. That think tank came up with a workable plan. We had to work with a number of groups in the city, the county, a lot of our government officials, and particularly the IEPA and the Attorney General's office. But at the end of the day, we kept working toward a resolve that everybody could really live with, and that resulted in ownership of the facility being turned over to our not-for-profit just this last month.
Tony Del Giorno, excuse me for botching your name there, but every group like this needs an attorney, because this could be a minefield for people who don't know the law to try to work through this, couldn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Luckily, I had a little bit of experience getting nonprofits started up, and one of my first suggestions to Chris and Polly was, let's get this incorporated, get 501c3 status, and then we'd have a vehicle by which we could move things forward around here. Hence our name.
Moving Pillsbury forward.
Yeah.
But the problems are many, because this was under a different ownership. You know, after Cargill closed it down, it was under a variety of ownerships. And in fact, the last one, the fella paid the price for breaking the law, didn't he?
Yes, absolutely. Right out the building here where we're standing, he brought down a building trying to scrap metal, sent asbestos up in the air. The US EPA ended up coming in, doing a nearly $3 million cleanup, and he actually spent time in federal prison because of it. And so what we found ourselves in the middle of trying to untie was the knot created by that and a 2015 injunction enforcement action by the Illinois Attorney General's office and the Illinois EPA, trying to get the former owner to secure the site and make sure that people couldn't trespass, make it safer for the neighborhood, and that just wasn't happening. And so status hearing after status hearing, there was nothing to report to the judge, and it just kind of sat there frozen. So when I came in, I was never a party to that case on behalf of moving Pillsbury forward, but we were able to have the conversations necessary with the Illinois EPA, the US EPA, the Attorney General's office, to try to see how we could move this in the direction that we need. And after 2 years of work, that finally happened in March.
We're standing in, I think this was a warehouse area.
Yes, yes.
It looks to me like it might have been the area where after all the milling done and the mixing was done and the packaging was done, then the packaged product would come in here to be shipped out, I guess.
Right, so this would be where your final flour product, cake mix boxes, that sort of thing would come in. Actually, there's some switches back here for the old conveyor belts. You'll see pancake mixes and I don't know what
Sure
else.
Enough.
And
sure
so
enough. I'll be done.
what would happen is as that would come through here, they
Pancake
would
conveyor,
eventually take it to the rail yard, which is on the other side of this building over there.
Let's take a look
and then load it onto the trains and then take it on out for shipping across the country.
Tony, back to your wearing your hat as a lawyer. Now that you have the deed and you have the property and you have the not-for-profit, what will a lawyer do in a case like this? What will you help them accomplish?
Well, the next step along the way is to do our Phase 2 environmental study. Phase 1, we had obtained a grant before we even got ownership to get that started so that could help limit our liability for taking over. So in Phase 2, we'll find out exactly what kind of contaminants are on the property, what it would take to remediate and eventually take down what's now become an eyesore.
Oh my goodness.
And so part of my role will be to make sure that we're in compliance with all of the grant requirements and any of the legal work associated with that. And I've had to do that in other situations. I help some rural water cooperatives do grant applications to the government to build water lines for folks. And so it's a similar process, and as I explained that to our local officials, you just plug and play. You figure out how it's done in order to you identify the problem. It's the same type of solution to get it done for other entities. And so moving Pillsbury forward, we're actually very hopeful that if we are successful in the next 3 to 5 years in bringing this property back into production for the community, we might be able to use this as a model for other parts of Sangamon County.
Well, Polly, you and your colleagues have really bit off a lot here. And I mean, we can see as we look through here, we're in one of the oldest buildings on the Pillsbury complex. I understand this was built in the 20s, and it would have been a warehouse area, and there were tracks on either side of this building. But if you look at the construction of this, you can see that they built it to stay, didn't they?
It's amazing. Look at the beams. We were told they're 12 by 16, perhaps made out of oak.
Oh, wow.
Maybe fir.
Yeah.
But look what they're holding up.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they're holding up. And if it weren't for the, dissolution of the roof, why these beams would still be treasures.
For decades and decades to come. You can see in some places they're not doing so well, but that's because they've been weathered. I mean, water's been pouring on them for 20 years now.
Yeah.
How did you get involved in this?
Well,
I mean, this is a big project.
This is a big project. I live in an older neighborhood, and I just love the east and the northeast and the southeast side of Springfield. I mean, I just think this is where so much history is, and I also think it's where so much neglect is. I mean, I think this is an area that has been abandoned, and my involvement is really to let's uplift this neighborhood, let's uplift this northeast, southeast, east side of town. Let's shift the paradigm where development and improvement and people's pride in living needs to take place.
When you take a business like this, a plant like this, which hired 1,500 people at a time, and a lot of people want to live close to their work, and then that goes away, then you've got this neighborhood with this huge vacuum, don't you?
Yes, I mean, this plant drove the creation of this neighborhood, which was, a viable, positive, upbeat neighborhood. You talk to people in this town, and this is where their aunts live, their uncles live, their grandparents live. This is where they spent Sundays. And we don't have that as much as we needed. And so I think that if we don't change this, if we don't remove this, there's absolutely no opportunity for there to be a revitalization, not gentrification, revitalization, so that the people who take pride and live here live in a better area of town, just have more of a free flow of people from all over the town coming here, whatever retail could develop, whatever light industry could develop, whatever uplift could happen here needs to happen.
And we can see, if you've been talking, we've been looking at some of the various, signs of just how decrepit this place is. The real trick, I guess, Polly, is going to be, okay, we got to tear it down, but what the heck do we do with it? Because removing all of this is going to be an enormous project.
It can be done. I mean, it's massive. I mean, these kinds of projects take place. They exist all throughout the Rust Belt. This is all the way from New York to the Mississippi River. There are abandoned projects like this. Now, truly, this is a large one. But the removal is really something that, demolition companies and, EPAs and that, they manage all the time. So we don't want to think it's impossible. We don't want to think it's overwhelming. We just need to think of it as a project that needs addressed, needs to happen, and something new needs to come with the area. It is 18 acres. There's opportunity here. We, as moving Pillsbury forward, we're not invested in the outcome. That's why we have community meetings. That's why we're collaborating, with city, county, state, other not-for-profits, to think about what could happen on 18 acres. It's a lot of land to work with, and great location. So, there's hope and possibility here, and that's what I see. I see this that served its purpose, was an economic driver, lots of great memories for people in this community, and there can be new memories, and there can be new opportunities, and that's what we need in Springfield and this area of town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Chris, okay, we've left the test kitchen. Gone up, two stories, I guess? Two floors?
Yep,
okay.
2 more stories.
And this tower itself has probably got a little ways to go. It's like 9 stories tall or something?
Right.
And this was where a lot of the actual, not the mixing, but I guess they were mixing product here, weren't they?
Right. This is the area where the cake mixes and the pancake mix, the chocolate cakes, the white cakes, and the brownies would have been mixed at. All the ingredients actually came together up on this level of the building. And by the time it got down to the lowest level, it would be packaged into boxes and then shipped out.
We've been talking during the program, Chris, about this facility, but what I hear from people in the community is, how does a community like Springfield get left with the responsibility to take care of this after companies have made their profits and sold and we get stuck with having to take care of this?
Right, and that's the tough thing about a lot of communities grapple with this same sort of facility throughout the Midwest. This particular one, once it got sold for scrap and dealt off to the scrap operators, and those guys came in and did partial demolition, that's the point at which it got difficult for the community, because the asbestos that was in the plant wasn't dealt with appropriately. The IEPA caught on to that and came in to regulate, do what they do, and make sure that the community's safe. And that's when everything got locked up in the legal process.
People like to blame Pillsbury, but Pillsbury sold it to Cargill, and it was a legal procedure, right?
Right.
Cargill sold it to the scrapper. That was a legal procedure, and then it got messy.
Right. Pillsbury sold a perfectly good working plant to Cargill. Cargill operated that plant for 10 years, and then they mothballed it and kept it intact as a workable facility for another 5 years after that. But it wasn't until it was sold off again and started to be parted out and scrapped out that things got difficult.
Yeah. And then it fell to the community, and in this case, your group, somebody willing to move things forward to deal with it. Let's walk over here a little bit. I want to show.
Sure.
I want to show some things that we have not seen. We're across the way from the building that we were in with Polly earlier, which was a warehouse space in the oldest part. But one thing we haven't seen are these massive silos. I don't know how many there are, but can you imagine the amount of grain they handled here?
Right. These were the silos that were built in the 1920s. The silos to the south end of the tall head house structure have 1 million bushels worth of capacity. And then in the 1930s, 2 more sections of silos were built, such that the plant totals 3 million bushels of capacity by 1950. Wow. So when it was in full operation, 3 million bushels of grain capacity here at the Pillsbury facility.
And one of the icon, I guess, is the water tower up at the very top. Wouldn't that be sweet if you could save that?
It would be wonderful if we could save that. I know I've heard from folks all throughout the community that you can see that water tower for several miles around because it sits so high up. And that's sort of the iconic symbol of the facility and all of the good things that happened here.
I can only imagine what kind of a crane you would have to import here to get that thing off there.
Right. Just a couple of weeks ago, I talked to a professional demolition contractor, and he said, you know, Chris, with enough money, anything's possible. He said, we could get a 500-ton crane down here from the Chicago area and pull that right off that roof if you had the right amount of money. And I said, well, how much would that be? And he said, well, it would probably be between $50,000 and $100,000. Just
nothing to it.
Just to make that happen. So, you know, if somebody's got an appropriate amount of money, we might have to start talking about saving the water tank.
Well, Chris, we're in sort of a logistical area that was very important to this plant. I mean, because we got double railroad on each side of this, and as you can see, it goes down, and then I guess it would join up with the rail yard after it goes around the silos and all that down there. But this was a key spot.
Right. This was the key spot where the 2 sets of rails, back in the day, they would be loading boxcars from either side warehouses, such that those cake mixes, brownie mixes, bags of flour could be shipped out all throughout North America. So this was a strategic location for Pillsbury when it was built in the 1920s, right in the heart of central Illinois, right in the heart of Illinois, where we're right in the middle of the continent, and you can transport goods anywhere in the country from here.
In the world.
In the world, yes.
Okay, well, we're still in central Illinois, right?
Right.
And we still have what could be a promising location for business, but not the way it is. We got to get rid of this.
Right. And that's the whole idea, is for us to work with the state and federal government, get those grant resources that we need to bring these structures down to a level where the property is then attractive for private investment to then redevelop. It's got all those strengths that Central Illinois has always had with being in a great geographic location to ship goods all throughout the world. We just need to get it back to a place where private investment feels comfortable with coming in, setting a timeline, putting a cost figure on that, and getting it back into production.
Is there enough grant money in the world to remove all of this?
Well, there is. There is. We're confident that there is a good pool of both state and federal money. As many of us know, that great big infrastructure package passed through Washington, D.C. just last fall. And there's quite a bit to be had there. So We're doing our very best to take advantage of that with good timing, with well-positioned facility, and with 12,000 people that live within 1 mile radius of this facility. We've got an available workforce potential here.
It'd be very interesting to see what would happen to this neighborhood if this became a very successful industrial area again. And maybe not even industry, just commercial, so a commercial area. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, great luck to you and your colleagues. I mean, you've already put a ton of work into this, but you're really just starting.
We really are. We're just starting. Yep. Acquiring the property was the first big step. We've got several big steps to go.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks so much.
Okay. I'm glad you got a chance to see the hugeness of this operation and what it was and what it still is. Can you imagine bringing all this down and either getting rid of it or chopping it up to where it's usable material to build on? That's what they're talking about. And they're talking about the best case scenario is within 3 years, this will all be gone and we can start talking about this as a commercial area again. With another Illinois story in Springfield, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.